Slim attendance today, but that's okay. Welcome, everybody. Today is October 24th, 2024. We are convening a work session to review AM 839-2024 Mayor Executive Appointment Confirmation Hearing for Kim Rash, Department of Health and Human Services. We're scheduled from 10:50 to 11:50. I have a feeling we will not use all of that time. We'll start with introductions. Mr. Johnson.
Zach Johnson.
Chris Constant on the phone. Mr. Littlefield.
I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Myers.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And I have noted that Ms. Zalatal, Mr. Rowland, and Ms. Brawley are excused from today's meeting. I don't know where everyone else is, but that's okay. So our tradition to start would be the executive provides an introduction. So we'll start with Ms. Wynn Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce for confirmation on the mayor's selection for Municipal Health Director, Kim Rash. Ms. Rash has been capably filling the role as acting director of the Anchorage Health Department since August 2022. Ms. Rash earned a Bachelor's of Science in Resource Economics from the University of Connecticut. She earned her Master's of Science in Organizational Leadership with Applied Business Management from Colorado State University. Before she stepped into the role of acting director, Ms. Rash had been serving as the Anchorage Health Department's deputy director for 6 months. In that capacity, she oversaw 145 employees and managed an annual operating budget of $15 million and a grants budget of over $30 million. Before joining the municipality, Ms. Rash worked first as a program specialist supervisor in the Arapahoe County Department of Human Services in Aurora, Colorado. She then served as that department's operations administrator for 8 years. Last year, in 2023, Ms. Rash was chosen to receive our municipality's Executive of the Year award for promoting the well-being of employees and performing her duties above and beyond her job description, something which stuck out to us in terms of the challenges the health department has lived through in the last few years and the trust that her team has in her as a leader. Her responsibilities include day-to-day operations and personnel management of the entire Anchorage Health Department. She's responsible for planning, implementing, and maintaining the programs, partnerships, and strategies that safeguard the public health of our community. I have nothing but confidence in Ms. Rash's ability to continue performing at the level of excellence and recommend that you confirm her in the role of Health Department Director.
Ms. Rash.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. And thank you to Mayor LaFrance and Municipal Manager Wynn Pearson for their trust in my continued leadership at the Health Department. I'm thankful to be here today and to be a part of a group of individuals who are so passionate. The Anchorage Health Department is a critical service provider in our community, providing safety net services and often considered as a third leg of the public safety stool. The department has gone through massive change within the past several years. The department became frontline workers during the pandemic, initially activating and then working collaboratively with the Office of Emergency Management for several years. During this time, we know internally there was additional change compounding the employee burnout and compassion fatigue among some staff. After 2 years of being in the acting role, I have learned an immense amount of programmatic and workflow functionality within and outside the department in an extremely condensed onboarding. In addition to navigating this new norm, I wanted to build trust and accountability with staff and show up alongside of them, and most importantly, learn from them. I wanted to provide stability in the midst of what they've gone through and acknowledge those challenges while providing a path forward. In early 2023, the health department was at an all-time high vacancy rate of 36%, with our lowest rate of 15% a few months ago. We are making slow progress. Change is hard, it is messy and uncomfortable, but at times, but through this, staff have truly shown up and supported each other and me these past few years. I've listened to staff, and what they've said loud and clear is that they want an individual they trust, someone they can advocate for them in the programs within which they work, and consistency. I believe in supporting the department goals, the staff, and the programs we offer our community, which is why I'm sitting here today in front of you. My vision for the health department is to replicate what is working well, from outreaches to collaboration internally and externally, continuing to figure out what is not working well by getting to yes and getting back to basics. AHD needs to reestablish broken connections, break down silos that exist within the department while building programmatic understandings. leveraging assets and funding by looking holistically at the continuum of care, figuring out where those gaps exist and who can fill those. AHD needs to continue to be fiscally responsible with our federal, state, and local dollars. We need to articulate to decision makers those funds in a comprehensive and concise way. HD needs to leverage technology to create accessibility and visually display data. We are committed to being a quality provider for underserved Alaskans by providing equitable services for all, meeting individuals in their environment and learning from them and adjusting along the way. The health department has gone through a lot since the pandemic, and we are poised at this time to take advantage of the opportunities that are presenting themselves to be in conversations that have positive impacts for the Anchorage community. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Assembly. Apologies for being late. I would like to say a few words in support of the selection of Ms. Rash. Or did I repeat it? Oh, okay. Sounds like I'm catching up. So anyway, I do want to urge support for Ms. Rash, and I had the pleasure of working with her actually when I was in your seats on the Assembly, and very much appreciated the professionalism and collaborative approach that Ms. Rash takes. And also, wanted to mention, as the municipal manager did, that again, Ms. Rash was chosen to receive the municipality's Executive of the Year award. And I believe that speaks volumes about the level of support that she has from all the staff at the health department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd note that Ms. Braga has joined us. So, and I don't know why, I think almost all of us thought the meeting started at 10, or 11, not at 10:50. And so, a couple of us checked our phones this morning. We're like, oh, it's 10:50. So we managed to get here on time only by luck. And so I think it was because we rescheduled it. So, okay, so we've done introductions. We have before us a memorandum. Do we have any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Bronco.
Well, first off, I just cannot say enough great things about Ms. Rash. In the short time that I have been involved in the Assembly, if you look at municipal employees, she stands high above in her organization, ability to work both sides of the table, and always having a positive outlook. But if I was going to ask a question, because that's what I was supposed to do, what do you feel like your biggest success in the last year and your biggest frustration?
Great question. So I think the biggest success that we've had is really coming together in early 23. Everything had fallen apart in 22. There was a lot of uncertainty, and the team really came together to really continue to provide services. We've reduced our vacancy rate tremendously, and I think that also is a success story because we're able to provide more services to our community. I think with a frustration, that's kind of hard for me to say because I don't often get very frustrated. Working in government, there's always the nuances with processes and how long things take sometimes. And I think it's just wanting to have people come to the table and figure out the solution. Sometimes when you have processes in place, this is how it's always been done. But is that the way it needs to continue to be, or can we look at ways to change that? And I really think that we are at a spot as a whole municipality to look at processes and really refine those if needed, to streamline processes. And one of the things that we recently did in early 24, is to bring online the ability for individuals to apply for grant opportunities without having to make multiple copies of paperwork, and you can actually submit those digitally now. So I think that's a huge success, and an ability for different departments to come together.
Anyone else? I have a couple if no one else does, but no, you go ahead if you have a question. Nope. Okay. Thank you. So First, I think I've been pretty clear now over the last couple of years about my belief that we need to have some kind of a real close review of our animal care and control kind of capital and operation to restore us to a place where we're a better provider of animal care. I think that, I need an update on my monthly report on euthanasia, but we've evolved, in my opinion, to the point where we are pretty regularly euthanizing animals for space reasons. And that means we're operating a kill shelter, not a no-kill shelter. And I recognize that some animals are sick. Euthanasia is actually a compassionate option, and some animals are dangerous. Those animals, we find ourselves in that difficult position where euthanasia is part of the story. But I think that we are, practically speaking, now just defaulting to a kill shelter for capacity reasons. So I'm hopeful to hear now what your thoughts are after I've asked this question a number of times. How are we going to manage this going forward?
Yes, great question. So over the past couple of years, we have looked at that facility. I think that at this point, we need to figure out what that is, what that building, what our options are, because we know that the current facility is an aging facility. There are things inside of it that, such as the incinerator, that if it were to go down, it would cost over $1 million to replace. And so we really need to look at possibly a capital improvement project for that facility. One of the first steps is to get blueprints so that we can move forward. And I think that would also lend very well to looking not only increasing capacity at the facility, but potentially increasing the contract for services. It's a little over $2 million a year. We know that we have gone out and received grants for additional spay and neuters to tack on to the funds that we currently have that the municipality offers. So I think that's an opportunity. That particular contract will come up next year in 2026, I believe. So it'd be after that we can look at potentially expanding services so that we can bring on more employees, and so that perhaps one day we can get to the point where they are picking up feces in the community and not just rushing from call to call to call and addressing that way. But we do know that facility is an aging asset.
I don't know they'll ever pick up waste, but they certainly, if they have the bandwidth, could be citing people for not picking up their own waste. That way we could create a culture of self-responsibility, which is been lost. Okay, other questions? Go ahead, Karen.
Well, you're talking about the no-kill shelter. I just wanted to throw in that I hope we will never get to where Florida is. We had to take some cats from my sister-in-law's place, and they are no-kill, but they neuter and just release. And I just think it's really awful to see these cats just crawling all over through parks, and they can't, procreate. So they feel like that's the solution. But there is a lot of agencies, I think, that partner with animal control to come and get pets so they're not destroyed. So maybe that's the angle we work on, more partners with animal control. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is last year when we were doing health policy committee meetings, we had a presentation about managing me. And I think that's what it was called. It was a group that was coming in to help change the culture and uplift the health department. Is that still going on? And
So it ended a few months ago because their grant ended. So we are looking for additional grant funds to bring them back. We do potentially have an avenue for some funds that could last up to 3 years. There is still a need. The staff really like to engage through that avenue. And it really works to break down the silos within the department. When you have large turnover in a department, you often lose what the other programs do and how an individual can come into the building and almost be a one-stop shop and being able to be offered a plethora of services. And so that's something that Managing Me is helping us do.
So I have another question if no one else does. No one on the phone. Okay, so before this meeting, I briefed Kim, Ms. Rash, that I would ask this question, and I think it's an important question, but not one to be sprung on someone. We had a long discussion on Tuesday night about a vendor who is problematic, and we have no choice because we need services that are critical for life and safety in the municipality. There was an investigation conducted by staff relating to the vendor, and the investigation report was found to be faulty to a point of meaninglessness, that it was not useful. It did not achieve the goal, which was to identify what happened and how these relationships were established and what we should be doing. So instead, the municipal attorney wrote a cover letter that said, doesn't do much. That report was done by certain staff on the management team. And in that report were the text messages in which a person who was actually in the chain of the investigation was saying "we" in relationship to herself, the department, and the vendor. And so my concern is that probably there still are some staff who are kind of in the "we" of the relationship between that vendor and the department. And I work professionally on grants that are authorized by the state, so a bit of a different agency, but pretty similar. And historically, my experience for the past 20 plus years has been that there is and must needs be some separation between those who have a responsibility to oversee contracts and those who deliver contracts on behalf of the government agency. And so my question really boils down to, what procedures are you preparing to put in place so that we no longer have this bleed between those who are supposed to be overseeing the hens in the hen house? Because it felt like we had a fox in the hen house, and now at least it's all on the other side of the table. So what are we going to do to ensure the boundaries are clear and we protect the municipality and the people?
Great question. So first off, I think it really goes to the different roles. So we have a housing and homelessness team. We have a program manager. That team is fully staffed now. That team had dissolved itself in 23 into 24. And so we had to add that extra layer of programmatic oversight into a group of individuals in which that is not their role. And so really we have two separate roles. We have our grants and contracts team, which really works on negotiations, executing of grants and contracts. And then we have the program side. And really making sure that we separate those two and we continue to separate those two. If in the future we come to a point where that team doesn't have that capacity because of vacancies, then I think what needs to happen, instead of it pushing back over to grants and contracts, that needs to be taken on by the division manager and or deputy director. In regards to if it comes to us that we need to do an investigation that's outside the scope of what we are able to do, then I need to engage with legal and HR more robustly, and make sure that they are guiding us in how we approach this and providing updates throughout. That was one of the missteps, is that I didn't provide any updates. It was, here's the report and it's done. But having those conversations and being a little bit more work plan driven, and making sure that if there are things that were missed, that we capture those in any sort of investigation or oversight, and making sure that we address those before anything is finalized and it goes out the door. But really it comes down to separating roles and making sure that those don't bleed back in together, because it's not appropriate, but it's what we had to do because we were at such a high vacancy rate.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone on the phone? All right. I'm sorry for the slim attendance today. I'm pretty confident. I know where my vote's at. You saw my quotes in the paper, and they only used a little bit of it. I'm strongly supportive of your confirmation. I think that it's good to have a steady hand over time. It's kind of bringing things back to sanity over there after a long time of what could only be described as insanity. And so with that, if there are no further questions, we'll be done with this and come back at, I think, noon. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Myers.
I just wanted to say I look forward to the confirmation hearing and supporting Kim in her new role. I think she'll do an excellent job.
All right. Thanks for speaking up. Anyone else? Nope. Thank you. We're adjourned.